Now, when you were talking about God being sort of the best explanation for all of these things, it sounds like it's just a generic concept of God. I mean, right. How do you know that this is the Christian God necessarily? It could be the Jewish God or the Islamic God. So how do you get to the Christian God from here on?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, is that I even say this in the last chapter of the book, that it's true that, and part of what we're doing in this book is making a case for theism. But there are many forms of theism. And in many ways, the case we're making could be made by a Muslim or somebody else who's got a monotheistic view, or maybe not even a monotheistic view. So then the next step becomes, well, how do we tell which of these claims about monotheism or about theism in general is actually accurate? So I think that's where the case for Scripture, for what we see in the first century Scripture related to Jesus of Nazareth, becomes important. So my journey was exactly the way I wrote the books. I became interested in Jesus because a pastor, I got into this church when I was not a believer, and this pastor pitched Jesus as a super smart guy. So I was like, well, I want to see what Jesus had to say. So I bought a Bible and I started reading the Bible, and I became interested in the person of Jesus. So I started to examine the eyewitness accounts, testing them the way I test other eyewitnesses. And in the end of that process, I became pretty certain that these were reliable up to the miracles. And that's when I did what we just did tonight, to see, did my philosophical naturalism really stack up? And so for me, it was Jesus first, and then I moved into this investigation second. So it really was, I was looking at Christianity. Some people will say, well, look, did you examine Islam? Did you examine Mormonism? Did you examine Sikh or Hinduism? No, I didn't. But think about this for a second. When I get somebody in my sights as a suspect who actually explains all of the evidence and I bring him to trial, and it's because this guy is he's the murderer, and he happens to be a 6-foot-tall white male with blonde hair and blue eyes. Do I have to then exclude every other 6-foot-tall, blonde-haired, blue-eyed guy? Do I need to show you why all those other blonde-haired, blue-eyed guys are not my guy? Of course not. If I've got good reason evidentially to believe that this is my guy, I'm under no burden to exclude every other guy who happens to look like him. The same thing is true for us. If we've got good reason to believe that Christianity is evidentially true, you don't have to go ahead and make a case against every other system. You've got a positive affirmative case for this particular suspect.